The Adventures of the Traveling Mongoose Cage. I went to my boss's trailer that was on the construction site that I was working on. On the side of the trailer, I noticed a cage, with a wooden box in it. A half-moon was cut out of the wooden box, and a tail was hanging out of the half-moon of the wooden box. A sign hung on the cage which said, "Please do not poke the mongoose." A small stick was sitting on top of the cage. I went inside and said hi to my boss Jiggs and my friend Jimmy. My boss Jiggs asked me if I would take the mongoose cage, put it in my truck, and bring it to the clambake the next day. I said, "Sure, no problem." Just then, Jimmy said, "Hold on, here comes the delivery man." The delivery man was walking up to the trailer, where he noticed the mongoose cage. He brought the material in and said hi to everyone. Jiggs signed the paper for the delivery. Jimmy asked the delivery man if he saw the mongoose cage outside. The delivery man said yes to Jimmy. I was looking at it, but it seemed like he was sleeping. Jimmy said, "Well, you can take the stick that's out there and give him a little poke. That makes him think we are going to feed him, and he'll come out, but don't poke too hard, that annoys him, and you know how fast they are, and they can be very vicious, so don't poke too hard." Jimmy and I went over to the window. He said to me, "Watch this." The delivery man was poking into the screen cage at the tail in the half-moon. The delivery man poked it once, and he poked it again. Then he poked it even harder, and Jimmy pulled the monofilament string, and a trapdoor opened, making a loud noise, and a piece of fur hit the delivery man right in the neck. The delivery man ran so fast back to his truck, yelling and screaming with his hands flaring in the air. The piece of fur fell to the ground. Jimmy and I were laughing so hard. It was so funny to see the delivery man carry on so. After the delivery man had left, Jimmy and I went out and got the cage, and we put the cage into the back of my truck to bring to the clambake for the next day. As I was leaving work, I stopped at the local bar to see one of my friends, to find out something about the clambake. Another friend of mine was sitting at the bar. We call him Raccoon. He is a good friend of mine. I wondered how he had gotten there so quickly, before me. It looked like he had already been there for a couple of hours. I sat down next to him. We talked and laughed. For a while I said to him, I had to go that I had the mongoose cage in the truck, and I had to go home because the neighbor was watching my kids. She had picked up the kids when they got off the bus and watched them until I got home. Raccoon said, "You have a mongoose?" I said yes, in the truck. Raccoon said, "Go out and bring the cage into the bar so we can see it." I said no, I have to go. I have to pick up my kids, and I have to prepare for the clambake the next day. Just then, the barmaid Alice came over. She said, "You have a mongoose?" I said, "Yeah, I have a mongoose cage in the truck," and before I knew it, she had poured me a drink. She said it was on the house, and she would love to see the mongoose. I said I have to go. She said, "Come on," as she poured me another drink, so, after a couple of drinks, I felt like I had to bring the mongoose cage in. I brought it in and set it up on a table. Alice came out from behind the bar and looked into the cage. She could see the tail was sitting in the half-moon cutout. I started into the routine. Be careful, you've heard of Rikki Tikki Tavi. Mongooses kill snakes and cobra snakes, and they're very fast, and they're very vicious. So don't poke too hard because it makes him very mad. But if you poke easily, then he'll come out thinking he's going to get his food. Alice picked up the stick and gave a little poke, and she poked again. I have little time, so I figured, okay, the next poke, I will pull the monofilament line. Well, the next poke happens, the trapdoor opens with a loud bang. Alice got hit right in the chest with the fur, and at the same time, Raccoon fell off his barstool onto the floor. Alice climbed up on his barstool and jumped over the bar as she threw the fur off. When Alice realized what happened, Alice started yelling and screaming at me. She told me to take that mongoose cage, and my big butt, and get it out of her bar, which is what I was trying to do in the first place. I was pulling into the driveway of my high ranch home. For those who don't know what a high ranch is, you come in the front door 3 steps up to the living room and 3 steps down to the basement or playroom. I grabbed the mongoose cage and brought it down to the playroom. I set it up, thinking that I would show my children the mongoose cage when they came home from the neighbor's house. I called my neighbor, apologizing for being home late. I explained I had to stop and pick up the mongoose cage. She said, "You have a mongoose?" I said, "Yes, I have a mongoose cage." She replied, "I'll be right over." I laughed to myself for a minute, and then set up the cage. My kids came in the door. I gave them a big hug and told them to put their stuff away. My neighbor followed right behind them. She asks, "Where is the mongoose?" I said it is downstairs in the playroom in his cage, but it's been driving in the back of my truck. So maybe he will be a little nervous. She said, "I don't care, I want to see it." I said okay. I went into the routine of Rikki Tikki Tavi, and mongoose kills cobra snakes. I said, "You have to poke gently. It'll come out thinking that it will get its food. If you poke too hard, it'll attack, thinking it's a snake." Just then, my 3 kids came to see the mongoose too. The neighbor poked and watched. She poked a second time a little harder, on the 3rd poke. I released the latch, and the bang of the door echoed louder in the playroom, and the fur hit her right in the chest. She was yelling and screaming, ran up the 3 stairs and right out the door into the yard, trying to grab the fur off her body. My kids' faces were in shock. We ran up the stairs and out the door into the yard to see what was happening. She realized it was just a piece of fur. She came at me and started hitting me, saying, "You scared the heck out of me." I was laughing, saying you wanted to see the mongoose. Well, there it is. The very next words out of her mouth were that we have to set it up again. I want to do it to my husband. So, we set it up, and she went and got her husband and brought him over. My kids and I were sitting in the playroom waiting for them, and he started poking. I released the latch, the fur jumped out and hit him in the face, instead of running outside. He just fell to the floor trying to get the fur off his head, yelling and screaming. We all had a good laugh. Later the next day, I arrived at the clambake with the mongoose cage in the back of my truck. We set it off in a secluded area away from the central part of the clambake. It was a beautiful day, and everybody was enjoying the clambake. As the day went on, more and more people were talking about the mongoose. I was serving shrimp out to the people, and a retired electrician shuffled very slowly up on the line to get his shrimp. He looked up at me and said he couldn't remember the last time he had shrimp. Everybody else was getting 6 to 8 pieces of shrimp, but I felt sorry for him, and with 2 hands, I picked up a bundle of shrimp and dropped it onto his plate. His eyes brightened, a smile came to his face, and he said thank you so much. He had heard all the noise over where the mongoose cage was. He asked me what that noise was. I told him, well, that's just the mongoose cage. They have a mongoose cage? The man replied, I think I'll see it. I suggested to him, it might not be a good idea. He said I'm going to finish my shrimp, I've never seen a mongoose, and I'm going to go over and see the mongoose. I thought to myself, oh, please don't let him poke the mongoose. The next morning, I ran from my bed into the bathroom. I sat down on the toilet, and it felt like my stomach had exploded into the toilet. I was very pleased that I had made it to the toilet. I had eaten a lot of food the day before at the clambake, and had much to drink, so I felt like it was just a cleaning out process, so I was okay with it. I got to work. I found out that a lot of the guys that were at the clambake also had the same problems with their stomach. They said that they had heard that a couple of trays of shrimp had gone bad, and they were very pleased that they had made it to the toilet too. I thought to myself, what about the old guy that I gave all that shrimp to? I wonder if I killed him. I know if he had to make it to the bathroom, he wasn't going to make it, and there was going to be a mess. I felt terrible. Throughout the day many of us ran for the Johnny on the spot, which made for a very long day. My boss had told me that he had gone to the doctor and got a prescription to help him. I didn't have a doctor of my own, but the pediatrician that I brought my kids to was in the town that was nearby. So, after work I went to the doctor's office, and I went up to the receptionist. I said I would like to see the doctor. She asked me if I had an appointment. I said no, but if you tell him that it's me, Artie, and I need to see him for a minute, he'll come out to the waiting area for me. She said if you don't have an appointment, we are booked for the day, you'll have to come back tomorrow to see the doctor. I explained to her that I have been diarrheaing all day about every 45 minutes, and it's been about 30 minutes since the last time I have gone to the bathroom. In about 15 minutes there's going to be an awful mess in the middle of your waiting room. I suggest that you go get the doctor, and have him come out and see me before we have a mess that neither of us want. Her face went pale as she went to the back of the doctor's office. The doctor came out and said, "Hey, Artie, what's up?" I told him about the problem I was having, and that I just needed a prescription. We had been friends for a long time. Me and the doctor played basketball together, and he's been overseeing my kids' health for the past 10 years. He just laughed and wrote me a prescription, and said have a good day. I said thanks, took the prescription and ran to the pharmacy.